Have you ever had a goal so big that you just knew that everything would be different once you got there? Once you got that thing, then everything would tip and life would be good. That was me when I was like 25 years old, and I had one goal: to have visible washboard abs. Vain, I know, but hey, I was a single guy in my 20s. You couldn't tell me at the time that there was anything more important. But what I learned in the pursuit of that goal changed everything for me. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton. I help high achievers who feel stuck bridge the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy that it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I help you create habits, build routines and behaviors that stick, so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. Chase Jarvis said, "You've got to do the verb to be the noun. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to do business. If you want to be part of a happy relationship, you have to work on it. And if you want to be a fit person, you have to work on your fitness." So when I was 25, I wanted to be jacked, and I was ready to give up everything to get it. I was living like I was a professional bodybuilder, even though I was definitely not getting paid for it. I started at around 200 pounds, and I was ready to get shredded. I had the knowledge, I had the resources, and I had the time. But fast forward less than a year later, and I actually got the result I wanted, but I hated it. And today, I'm going to tell you why achieving my quote-unquote dream body was a huge letdown, as well as what I'd do differently if I had to do it all over again, so you don't make the same mistakes that I did. Let's time travel back a bit. The year is 2015. I'm 25 years old, and I've been working as a personal trainer for about 3 years. My first few years working in the gym, I was really focused on getting strong. I was just learning about macronutrients and lifting heavy, and I started quote-unquote bulking. Most of my life prior to that, I sat around 180 pounds with not a lot of muscle. I was not a fit kid. I was not into sports. I wasn't really fat either, but I was definitely a little chunk, what you might call skinny fat, a little belly, chubby cheeks. It wasn't until after graduating college that I got into fitness and became a personal trainer. And then I started lifting heavy, eating a lot, and I went up to over 200 pounds at my highest. And it was muscle. I was working out hard. I was definitely the strongest that I had ever been. But I also definitely gained a lot of fat in the process, doing what would be called colloquially as a dirty bulk, basically meaning I just ate everything and justified it by saying I was bulking and fueling my muscles. And all of this was fine for a while because I was getting strong and I was a little fluffy, but I didn't care. But even though I was feeling strong, there was still something nagging at me. And that's because 3 years into being a personal trainer, I was noticing something. Every guy who came to me for personal training wanted basically one thing, and that was visible abs. And here I was, the guy that they were paying to help get them to that goal, and I didn't have any visible muscle on me. And if I was being honest with myself, having abs was something that I wanted too. Since I was a chubby teenager, I was always jealous of the ripped guys with abs walking on the beach. And I had tried various times throughout my life, in high school, in college, when I first started working out, but I never actually got to the point of having actual six-pack abs. So I decided that I was going to diet down to having visible abs no matter what. No matter how hard it was or how much I had to sacrifice, I was going to get it this time. Because if I was going to have people pay me to help them get that result, it only seemed fair that I do it for myself first. So I spent the next 6 months meticulously tracking my macros and my calories, doing a shit ton of cardio, working on my abs literally every day, also lifting, also still doing less important stuff like working. And all of this was timed to be leading up to a photo shoot that I was doing for the gym that I was working at that time. So when I finished this weight loss phase, or cut as they call it, I was sitting at around 165 pounds. Meaning I lost just under 40 pounds from my peak weight when I started. And that's in less than 6 months. And I still remember it to this day. stepping on the scale that morning and seeing 164 for the first time since I was probably in junior high school. And I looked in the mirror and I could see abs. No flexing, no crunches. They were just there. I was mind blown. Then I went to the gym that day for the photo shoot. There was a professional photographer there who had me do different movements and different poses, flexing, whatever. It took a few hours. And the photo shoot ended, and then nothing. I don't know what I expected, but it just felt anticlimactic. I had been working on this thing, this goal, this huge milestone for so long. I mean, yeah, it was 6 months of work, technically, but really having abs was something I had dreamed about since I was a kid. Maybe all guys do. And now it was finally there. I had it. And what happened? What changed? I'll tell you. Nothing. I mean, sure, I felt a sense of accomplishment for a moment, but that came and went just as quickly. No one stopped me to congratulate me or shake my hand. Girls were not throwing their bra and panties at me. Money did not start to appear in my bank account. And that very same day, the very same day I got to the goal, I took some pictures, and that was the day I decided that I'd never care about abs again. And as soon as I left that gym, I went right to get some pizza. Although the result felt underwhelming, what I actually got out of that whole ordeal were a few valuable lessons that not only helped me grow as a person, but that I also used to help my coaching clients over my next decade as a fitness and nutrition coach. But interestingly though, now, years removed with the power of hindsight, I can see that these lessons are not just about abs or even fitness, but these are good guidelines for life in general. So the first lesson I learned from losing 40 pounds in less than 6 months and getting absolutely shredded was that nobody cared. I mean, flat out, I will say, getting visible abs, getting to under 10% body fat is not worth it. Even though I might not have said it out loud back then, the real reason we all know that I was trying to get shredded, that I was trying to look like this, was for external validation. I wanted to look impressive to other people. So when I got there and it didn't change the way people looked at me, it was like a proverbial punch to the gut. Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds. But right now, I have to tell you about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. If you want to join hundreds of change seekers just like you and get free trainings, resources, and direct help from me in order to help make your quest for change easy, then click the link in the show notes that says Facebook group now. You'll be directed to my private Facebook group that I created just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever podcast app you're listening on right now. Okay, let's get back to the show. Those 6 months of losing weight were some of the most miserable of my life. I tracked every morsel of food that went into my body. And that means if I couldn't weigh it or measure it, I was not eating it. Which meant that I wasn't going out for food with friends. I was skipping social events, even birthdays with my family. I wasn't drinking, which probably was a good thing, but at the time was a big sacrifice to my social life. I was working out twice a day, which was only possible because I literally worked and basically lived at the gym at that time. My energy was low because I wasn't eating enough. My sleep sucked. My mood sucked. I had no sex drive. All of it suffered. I also got weak. I mentioned that I had worked really hard to build strength and size over the last few years, and I lost all of that in those 6 months. 3 years of hard work was gone in just a few months. I couldn't lift as much. I couldn't work out as long, which makes sense. I was literally starving and wasting away. But at the time I was doing it, I justified it. I told myself it was worth it because of the big payoff that was sure to come at the end. Because sure, life sucks now, but when I have abs, everything will be different. It felt like that had to be the case. That had been the story in my head my entire life. TV, social media, movies, the big star always had chiseled abs. He was always super jacked, so the message was clear. Having abs makes you better. Obviously, that's not the truth, and that's not quite how it worked out for me. The big takeaway I got from this was that we are all the main characters in our own story, but no one else's. I felt like I was going on this miraculous journey, and I was, but that only mattered to me. Even my closest friends and family, even though they might have noticed that I lost some weight, but they didn't really care if I was 10 or 20 pounds heavier or lighter. Other people are worried about themselves, and much to my dismay, not obsessed with my personal fitness journey. There's a quote I see going around social media every so often that goes something like, "Love the life you have." And that really sums it up. We always have this feeling that everything will be better when I get the guy or the girl, when I'm rich, when I have abs. But the reality is that if you aren't happy now, you won't be happy when any of the change happens. And if you are happy now, then kudos, you've already won. Usually, the former means the change you're going after is for the wrong reasons. Like me wanting abs, saying it was to be able to better serve my clients, but in reality it was purely out of vanity. But the latter is for reasons of personal growth, which in my experience will never steer you wrong. The second thing I learned from my weight loss journey was that the squeeze has to be worth the juice. Like I said, guys would always come up to me as a trainer and say they wanted me to help them get abs. And often, they'd say it with a bit of hesitation. They'd say something like, "I really want to get abs, but I'm not sure I can." Probably because they had, like me, tried many times in the past, from their young adolescence up until their adult life, and failed over and over. So me, after learning from my own experience, I explained to them how hard it actually was, these sacrifices that I had to make, and what that actual journey looked like. And I'd say, you definitely can have abs. I can help you get there. It'll take maybe 6 to 12 months. That's how long it took me. But this is what you're going to have to give up. Realistically, you're going to have to sacrifice food, drinks, social life, energy, sex drive, yada yada, all those things. And it's going to suck. And it's going to take time. And when you get there, you might find that you really don't like it all that much and it doesn't actually change anything. Now, with all of that said, is this still something that you want to commit to? And what I found was, at that point, when I laid it out so matter-of-factly, most guys would say, no, it's not worth it. And then we'd work together to find a more reasonable goal. But some guys would still say, yeah, I will give up whatever because I want this goal that badly. And so we would. Either answer is fine because it's coming from an informed place, taking a look at the real, full picture. And this is how I look at goal setting in all areas now, not just fitness. It is not enough to just look at the goal. The question isn't, do you want to have abs or not have abs? Or do you want to lose 20 pounds or not lose 20 pounds? Or do you want to have a successful business or be trapped in a 9-to-5 that you hate? Do you want to be rich or do you want to be poor? Because the answer to all of those questions is obvious. The actual question is, do you want to have what you already have for the minimal amount of effort that you're already putting in? Or do you want to work towards a possible payoff in the future with a lot of sacrifice and a really hard time for a potentially undefined amount of time? And still, you could not get the desired result. And when you do get the result, if you get it, it might not feel as good as you thought it would. And when you think about it that way, it doesn't sound as appealing. But those are the options that you're really choosing between. And from there, the choice is yours. As the cliche goes, you have to learn to enjoy the journey. So understanding what the actual journey is and what the actual steps that you are going to take to get you there is imperative. You have to be okay with the ups and the downs that come along with the journey you're setting off for. When I was trying to get abs, I was able to push through it for a few reasons. It was a short-term goal. I had a specific date in mind, that photo shoot. So it was easier to keep myself going. I also worked at a gym. I worked as a nutritionist, so my environment was conducive for making this goal easier for me. And I had an extreme amount of motivation because I knew that I would actually make more money as a new trainer because it looked a certain way. And all of that helped me stick to this goal even though it sucked. But even with all of that, that only got me through 6 months. If this was a lifelong goal, like being healthy, improving my finances, it would have been unsustainable because the journey itself was unsustainable, no matter how much I desired the end result. And the last lesson that I learned from what I'll call my abdominal ordeal builds off of that. And it's simply that you probably don't need to go as far as you think you do. And certainly you don't need to get there as fast. Like I said, I had a photo shoot that was fast approaching, and I wanted to get all my results as fast as possible to be ready. So to get there, I was doing a lot of stuff that flat out I didn't like doing. I was essentially starving myself. What I can admit now, looking back, was disordered eating. I was skipping social events. I was not hanging out with friends and family. I was losing progress in areas I cared about, like my strength and my lifts. I was having to focus a lopsided amount of time and energy in areas that weren't paying off in any discernible way, like doing tons of crunches and other ab work. All because I had such a specific idea of what I was after and I thought I needed it to happen as fast as possible. This forced me to take unsustainable measures to get there. So I was able to get to the goal, but as I said, the very day I got there, I said, screw this, and I gave it all up. Now, lucky for me, I was educated in fitness and nutrition, and I knew enough to rebound out of this diet phase gracefully, and I ended up finding a healthy weight at around 180 pounds, which is where I still currently sit to this day 10 years later. It's also, if you recall, where I started and the weight that I was pretty much most of my adult life before I bulked up to 200. But this 180 was different. Since I was working out, I had more muscle, less fat. I was definitely more in shape. But the point is that had you asked me 6 months prior, when I was 200 pounds, to pick my ideal weight, there's no way I would have said 180. I would have thought that I had to go way lower than that to look good and feel good and be happy. I thought 160, 150 was where I was supposed to sit. But it turns out that 180 is good for me. That's where I'm healthy. That's where I'm able to eat what I want. I don't have to starve myself. I have energy. I have calories. I can work out hard. I can do the physical things that I want and need. My energy is high. My sleep is good. My health is good. And it's not the most important, but I do like how I look. And that's weighing 20 pounds more than I thought I needed to be fit. And you'll see the same thing in all areas. The amount of money you think you need to be rich is much less than you'd actually expect. To have a strong relationship, you don't need it to be perfect, but a small amount of meaningful interactions will get you a long part of the way there. What you see out there are extreme examples. On TV, social media, billboards, music videos. It's the fittest, the richest, the biggest, the baddest. And that's because that's what sells. That's what's interesting. It puts butts in seats. But that's not to say that that's actually what's needed for a meaningful life. It's actually the opposite. For most people, we'd be more content with half of the results. Think about it. If you set out for something and you get half of what you had initially been shooting for, that's still 100% more than you had before. It's only not enough if you're holding yourself to a made-up standard of what you think you need. On my way down to 160 from 200, I passed by 180. But at the time, it wasn't enough for me. I had a picture in my head of what success was, so I had to keep pushing. Which in itself isn't bad or wrong, but I'm just pointing out that it was, at least for me, completely unnecessary. 160 was an arbitrary made-up number, just like $1 million or whatever else you're shooting towards. So ask yourself, why that number? Why did I choose 160, not 162 or 159? Why did I assume that would be different than 170 or 180? Our brains like nice round numbers, and we assume that if we're going to shoot for a goal, we might as well shoot for the stars. Of course, it makes sense to aim for $1 million, because who would say they want to be a 600,000-aire? But maybe that's all you really need to live comfortably. And maybe the route to get 600,000 is much more sustainable over the next 5 years. And trying to force yourself to get to $1 million is unrealistic and leads you to burning out and giving up. Just maybe. So what does all of this mean to you? I'm not saying you shouldn't want to lose weight if that's your goal. I'm just telling you what my experience was losing a bunch of weight and getting to a point that I thought would be my dream, in the hopes that it helps you save time and not make the same mistakes that I made. Just like I'm not telling you to not want more money. I'm not telling you you can't want to be successful or anything else. I'm just pointing out that we are driven by these fallacies in the way that we set our goals and what we assume will happen on the other side of those goals. So my action step for you this week, whenever you're thinking about a big, scary, daunting goal, remember these 3 things. First, other people won't care. You have to be doing things for yourself, because if you're doing it for validation from others, that will not come. Even if you get to the goal, other people have their own problems, their own lives, so the big payoff of it changing everything is probably going to be a lot less than you'd expect. 2, decide if the trade-offs are worth it. Is the squeeze worth the juice? I know right now it's hard to believe, but there's a good chance you get to your goal and it doesn't change your life as much as you thought. So ask yourself, why is this actually important? Why does it actually matter for me to get this goal? Is what you're going to have to give up in the pursuit of that goal worth it? Don't think about just the goal, think about the trade-offs you have to make along the way to get there. And number 3, realize that your goals don't have to be as extreme as you might initially think. Would you be okay with half the money, half the weight loss, 3/4 of the success? It's possible that reducing what you're expecting makes getting the goal much more achievable and sustainable in the long run. I know that it seems impossible from the outside looking in. Someone saying you won't be happy when you lose the weight is like a rich person saying, money isn't everything. Sure, maybe, but I'd like to see for myself. Which is completely fair. Lots of my clients had to go on that journey for themselves to reach the conclusions that I've laid out in this episode. And if you have to do that for yourself, that's fine. But maybe you can learn from my mistakes and the mistakes of others and save yourself a lot of trouble and hassle in the meantime. That is Change Made Easy. Don't forget about the free Change Made Easy private Facebook community. Come join hundreds of change seekers just like you and receive free trainings, resources, and direct help from me that will help make your quest for change easy. Just go into the show notes of whatever app you're on right now and click the link that says Facebook group. You'll be directed to my private Facebook community that's just for clients and listeners of this podcast. And as a bonus, you'll get a free hour-long training on eliminating self-sabotage. All you have to do is click Facebook group in whatever app you're listening on right now.